Hey there everybody, Redbeard here back at it again, and today I want to talk about Greenskins. So, since we have the Chaos Dwarfs coming out, and that's on everybody's minds, we now look at what is like kind of a hybrid between a Greenskin, a Dwarf, and a Chaos roster in the Chaos Dwarves. So it's got me thinking, what can we do to spruce up the Greenskin and Dwarf rosters? I've talked about Chaos quite a bit on this channel already, and I plan to talk about it more, but right now I'm thinking about Greenskins, particularly, and Dwarves. So for the Greenskins, today let's talk about what kind of missing characters we still have. So, people in the community have talked about how the Champions of Chaos style pack would be good for the Greenskins, Vampire Counts, Dwarves, Empire, so on and so forth. But what if... Now, I think when they said 3 Lords and a Hero is going to be the DLC, how they're going to do it from now on, they've also said they're going to tinker with it and try different things, so... But I think, particularly for the first 4 Warhammer 1 races, the ones I just mentioned, that a 3 Lord and a Legendary Hero style pack would actually be perfect for them. So, today, let's talk about GORFANG ROTGUT, Gorbad Ironclaw, Snagla Grobspit, and Gatilla the Hunter for a Legendary Hero. So before we get into the meat of this, let's get a feel for how the community feels. Okay? So, Snagla Grobspit is our winner in this poll here that was taken in March 2022. This is in the Total War forums. I'll leave a link in the description. Snagla Grobspit was our winner. There was 164 votes in this poll for the Greenskins. They did this for every race, though. Our 3 main ones are easily Snagla, first place, Gorfang, second, Gorbad, third. And then it just kind of trickles off from there. Snagla Grobspit being our winner makes sense because of the 6 main sub-races of Greenskin. Forest Goblin's the only one we're missing. The others being Goblin, Night Goblin, Orc, Savage Orc, and Black Orc. So all we need is a Forest Goblin guy, and that's Snagla's our guy. He can also possibly give us a new spider mount and like a giant spider, something between, or a gigantic spider rather, between a giant spider and a Arachnarok spider. And then next is Gorfang, which I kind of always believed didn't really give us much unique. He's just a really popular character. But after some thought, but we'll get into that later. Gorbad Ironclaw, I love Gorbad. We'll get into why, but he led the greatest war ever. He's known to be the bestest orc ever. So, I think all 3 of these lords are a no-brainer, and that would bring us up to 8. So, yeah, 8, and then you're done with the Greenskins. But I still think we need to get Gatilla the Hunter as a Legendary Hero. And then Morglum, Necksnapper, and Grumluck, and Gazbag, I think could be pseudo-legendary lords. And Gazakan, I don't know why he's on this list, because he's a Hobgoblin Khane character. He just happens to be a mercenary that works over in the old world, particular Tilia. But Orgut Facebeater could be, should certainly also be a legendary hero, but just for Grimgore. Not for all of Greenskins, which Gatilla, I think, is perfect for. I think the rest of the names on this list just don't even really matter, to be honest with you. But now, let's talk about each character and what they could bring. GORFANG ROTGUT is the Squatter King of Black Crag, also known as the Troll Eater. He is chieftain of the Red Fangs and the Broken Tooth tribes, technically. But I think his faction in Total War would definitely be the Red Fangs. He is depicted in the introduction trailer for the Greenskins in Total War Warhammer 1 as an antagonist to Grimgore, because Grimgore was starting in Black Crag. But that is no longer. Famous for battles against dwarfs, such as the Siege of Barak Var and the Raid of Karak Azul. From the raid he captured Cazador's queen and son Kazrik, whose head was shaved and branded with a crude orc glyph representing Gorfang. He is known for his hatred of dwarves, and maintains an uneasy alliance with Skarsnik. I've generally thought he does not bring much that we don't already have with other legendary lords, but now I think a little different. He's tough enough to rival Black Orc war bosses like Grimgor. He's tanky enough to possibly and probably surpass Grom, being heavily armored. And since he is known as Rotgut and Troll Eater, may get regen in his skill line. He buffs primarily orcs in his armies like Azhag, and he hates dwarves like Skarsnik and fights them in the World's Edge Mountains. He does have an orc-boar chariot mount, but Grom has his wolf chariot and Wurzag has his boar, so this isn't all that unique either. I thought hard on how to make his campaign unique, and here's what I came up with. Foremost, I think Gorfang should have a greenskin version of Altharion's Prison of Athel Tamara mechanic. It would very much fit his lore. Gorfang's version would be called the Dungeons of Black Crag. At least that's what it's called in his story. When capturing a prisoner, you would still have the execute option, which could give plus 500 experience to Gorfang, but instead of plus 8 influence, which is the high elf mechanic, perhaps it gives you plus 20 scrap for unit upgrades. Then the resource for the mechanic could perhaps be renamed from Warden to War Bosses Supply. You would also still have to the interrogate option, which could give you an upgraded version of your Wa army ability, which would differ depending on which race the prisoner is from. The indoctrinate option would still exist, but would be renamed to humiliate, since this is what he was famous for doing to Cazador's son. This would be his unlock option after building the dungeons. This is opposed to interrogate from the chamber building for Altharion. In addition to the plus 3 war bosses supplies, half the scrap of execute, plus 10, campaign line of sight in the character's region every turn, and stealing 5% of the character's faction treasury per turn, it could also reduce leadership by perhaps 10% when fighting the character's faction. In addition, like Altharion, having a prisoner might give you negative 10 diplomatic relations with that race, but also plus 5 leadership when fighting them. As far as campaign buffs, the Dungeons of Black Crag could provide. Instead of the Mists of Yvres, perhaps we could have underway excavations, which could also provide increased ambush and agent action success chance, additional movement, range, and army ability, and reduced recruitment time for you and allies in regions you own. Instead of increasing Winds of Magic power reserves, though, it could increase the likelihood of catching an enemy attempting to use the underway and reduce your chance of getting caught. Perhaps the army ability could be called Creep in the Underway instead of Envelop in Mists, and could still give Snipe stock, and alternatively, perhaps it gives the Summon of Orc Boys, or something. It could be anything different, too. That's more Greenskin-like. The buffs for units would focus on all orcs, including Orc Boys, Biggins, Cavalry, Chariots, and Black Orcs. Or maybe not as much Black Orcs, but, maybe they're included too. I don't think he needs a unique Mistwalkers-like subrace of units. Let me backtrack. He does, with, who is it? Morglum Necksnapper. Morglum Necksnapper helps him. I'll get to that in a second, though. So, Black Orcs definitely work. I don't think he needs a unique Mistwalkers-like subrace of units, though that could be interesting. On the battlefield, he would be the closest to a generic orc war boss with hand weapon, shield, and heavy armor. As mentioned previously, perhaps he might unlock regeneration to rival Grom for tankiest Greenskin Lord. His thing is he has the shield and the super heavy armor, though. He'd be the most heavily armored out of all the legendary lords. For mounts, we know he can get a generic boar chart Boar Chariot. To make it stand out more, perhaps it could be a unique chariot, similar to Grom or Cetra. Perhaps this would be too much of the same, though. Perhaps he could have generic mounts such as a War Boar, the War Chariot, and maybe, just maybe, a Wyvern. I like Azag as being the Wyvern guy, but having a variety of mount options might help Gorfang stand out more on the battlefield. It's just a thought. But he's probably just serves better as being more just on-ground tanky. I don't know. Gorfang could maybe start with a legendary hero, being an Orc shaman named Zargak the Mad. Zargak is not a huge character, though, in the lore, like, as far as Greenskin characters go. So perhaps Gorfang just starts with a generic Orc shaman hero named Zargak the Mad. Or Zargak the Mad. Morglum Necksnapper could be a pseudo-legendary lord, whose Necksnapper faction would lawfully reside somewhere between Gorfang and the Darklands. Alternatively, since Morglum also led his armies into the northern Badlands to defeat the invading Bretonnians, he could start somewhere between the eastern Badlands and the Border Princes. Anyway, Morglum lawfully united with Gorfang and they attacked Karakazul together. So, in this, perhaps, in the early stages of Gorfang's campaign, you could unlock a Confederation mission with Morglum. After gaining control of your starting province, you will unlock that mission. Then you have to defeat dwarves in battle 3 times or something, and the Confederation event will appear. This is similar to how the Wood Elves confederate. As far as what Morglum brings to the table, he might provide buffs for fighting Bretonnians and dwarfs. He was known to be a heavily armored Black Orc war boss, who may have a War Boar mount. Lawfully, I believe he wields a 2-handed magic battle axe, but I've also seen him depicted with dual axes. Lastly, Oglok the Horrible is his second-in-command, Morglum's. So perhaps once you've confederated Morglum as Gorfang, Oglok will unlock for free in the tech tree. This would also give further incentive to go down the Orc tech line. And that is finally all of what I came up with for Gorfang's faction. After theory crafting, I have turned Gorfang's faction into the most interesting Greenskin faction as far as its mechanics. If anyone at CA is watching, please, when you start working on Gorfang ROTGUT, consider an Eltharion-inspired prisoner mechanic and a Morglum Necksnapper Confederation mission, pseudo-legendary lord thing. And I almost forgot to mention Gorfang ROTGUT's Wargear and abilities. Gorfang was one of the mightiest Orc war bosses, described as being as large as an ogre and renowned for hunting and slaying trolls for sport. The Evil Sun armor was a thick set of magical steel plate and scale mail, an enamel plate depicting the leering Evil Sun covering its stomach, and often accompanied by a close-fitting helmet carved into the shape of a snarling orc's face. Red Fang was an enormous serrated sword, as heavy as the giant cave squig Gobbler. Gorfang nevertheless wielded it with ease. In an attempt to make shorter, more digestible videos, I am going to cut this into like 3 or 4 parts. We'll start with Gorfang and we'll explore some other characters and territories later on. So let's just talk about his start position and then we'll get out of here. There is no other spot besides the Black Crag. There is no other place he would start. Grimgor, Azag, they moved out, thankfully, so that we can have Gorfang. That'll give us another big Orc presence in the Badlands area as well, which will be great. Also, this will start him possibly near a pseudo-legendary lord faction if we bring in Morglum Necksnapper as a pseudo-legendary lord. I think that would be really cool for Gorfang's faction if you had a Confederation mission, somewhat early on with Morglum Necksnapper, and you get kind of like this pseudo-legendary lord to go along with Gorfang. You'd be a Black Orc war boss, and he would start probably in maybe the southern World's Edge Mountains with Cazador, or maybe that's 2 pseudo legendary lords in one area, so maybe that's not good. Maybe we have Morglum in the Eastern Badlands, or the Wolflands, or the Blasted Wastes. Alright, so thanks for tuning in. This has been part 1 of my 3 Lords and a Hero Greenskin DLC speculation for Total War Warhammer 3. So stay tuned for part 2. See you then, and have a wonderful day.